now we are going to start our annual leadership panel. We've been doing this for about 10 years now. It has in the past been an event at a trade show. It was supposed to be a Printing United this year, but there is no Printing United in physical form. There's a Printing United in virtual form. It starts next week, runs through November 12th. And I would encourage everybody to visit printingunited.com and check out what's going on there. As I've been saying, there is something for everybody over all those many days. You can certainly find something to do there. So in regard to this panel, I want to start by introducing the panelists. Pat McGrew, if everybody could just wave when I mention your name. Pat McGrew is the principal of McGrew Group. Pat provides guidance and triage for printing marketing services, workflow, and companies supporting the print and communication industry. She's my original 1-800-PAT, answering the PAT signal. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned before, in case you missed it, the first recipient of the Gurley Award. Thank you so much, Pat, for everything you do for the industry and for still taking my calls after 10 years. That's quite an accomplishment. Dawn Nye, who is our 2020 Gurley Award winner. She is the Solutions and Services Marketing Manager at Konica Minolta. Dawn creates seamless integrations of solutions, services, and hardware via appropriate messaging based on customer needs. I also want to add that she fosters the young people in Konica Minolta. If you want to know, if you see the young, cool people running around in the Konica booth, there's a pretty good chance Dawn is hanging around and helping them really learn. When it comes to empower, long, and prosper, I mean, that honestly, Dawn, that should be your phrase. Sabine Gelderman. This is a very big honor, Americans who don't always expand their horizons beyond America. We have the director of Drupa here. Drupa is the world's largest print fair. Sabine brings the global community together by leading print's largest trade fair, and she is the first female director of Drupa. I forget how many years. Is it 60 years, 70 years?
Yeah, you're fully right. It's the 70 years of Drupa, founded in 1951. Mm-hmm.
The first female director of Drupa is on our panel and was our last year's Gurley recipient. Vanessa Carr, also known as V. She is the director of marketing of pulp and paper at Domtar. V inspires beyond and educates customers, influencers, and the next generation of paper and print professionals about the effectiveness and enjoyment that paper can bring and can generate. V is also a Project Peacock pioneer. I'm not sure if everybody knows what Project Peacock is. It is a roadshow that brought the new opportunities of print, paper, and marketing to brands and advertising agencies. We've met with over 2,000 people at this point, including some online programming that we started this year. When I called V and I said, I have this crazy idea to go visit brands and advertising agencies, she just said, what do you need? She didn't ask me any other questions other than what do you need? And that is truly what makes V one of my, I don't even know what to say, most important relationships in the printing industry. And I don't want to get all teary, but thank you, V, for years of support. Really appreciate it. Last but not least, now for real, we have Lori Anderson. Lori is the president and CEO of the International Sign Association. And I like to say, what doesn't Lori do? She runs an international organization, and over the years, I have come to know her as a true community builder. And I don't say that lightly because I consider myself a community builder, and I can consider that a lot of people who call themselves that are really not that at all. Lori truly is a community builder, who focuses on serving the always evolving needs of her members, as well as all of the attendees and exhibitors at her annual Sign Expo event. I've been working with her for many years. I think she's just amazing. I mean, how many other presidents and CEOs of organizations sit down and tweet with me at a trade show? None except Lori. She's awesome. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us today, and let's get on with the panel. So this panel is focused around women's careers being disproportionately derailed and affected by the pandemic, as well as, looking at how do we as women, as leaders, claim a space and protect it moving forward. And I'm saying protect for a real reason. If we look at the workforce now, we are, I mean, even just in conversations I'm having with people, there are families making decisions about children not being in school and who might need to stay home with children. And, we are reverting back to gender roles now. We are reverting back to all the years of pay inequality now have men being the ones who are going to keep their job because of money, even if a woman at a lower salary has a better career path. It's not what decisions are being based upon right now. We're in desperate times. So my question here is really focused around, what is, to everybody who might be losing a job or in consideration of having to kind of prove their value. Why should I keep you and not somebody else? How do you sell your professional value? And as a boss, what are some of the qualities that make people, regardless of their gender, a keeper for your team? Let's give people some advice on that. And before you respond, if you could just let people know a little more about what you currently do and how you're helping people. Let's start with V.
Hello, V here. So I work for Domtar, headquartered outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and we've done a number of things from a print and paper advocacy perspective over the years, from our very large scale award-winning campaign Paper Because to PrintWorks to the Blue Line and all that goes with that, and most recently Paper Matters, which is a publication associated with a blog and really shining the light on printers, designers, influencers, and all of that. So I would say, unfortunately, Domtar has had to make some tough decisions through the pandemic, with different roles being eliminated or, our organization being right-sized a bit. And it's never easy. If it ever gets easy, I say you have no heart. And for me, I think it's really important from a leadership perspective to lead with empathy and to lead with a level of respect and care for your people that kind of transcends the job. And I think sometimes that's difficult. And I think as an employee, it's also important to always shine from a perspective of what is your value to the organization, but does that value shine through in everything that you do? Does it shine through in your decision making? Does it shine through in your actions? Especially with people not being in the office, it's kind of difficult to know who's working and who's not working. And so if anyone ever has to question, is that person busy, or are they wasting the time of the company, or, what is their work ethic look like? I have always tried to make sure that I'm never in the position where, my boss or my boss's boss has to question the work ethic that I bring to the table and the things that I'm going to deliver. And I would just say that at every point, you have a choice. How you behave is your choice. When we got sent home, you could, sit around and eat bonbons all day and watch TV and do all that, or you can show your value and you can step up in different ways and you can accept projects or, ask, hey, my days aren't as full as I was anticipating. Are there things that I can do? Are there things I can learn? Are there trainings I can take? So just always stepping up, always being willing to go above and beyond and make sure that your work ethic shines through and that what you deliver shines through.
Thanks so much, Lori.
Recent data came out that 4 times more women lost their jobs in September than men. Just a hugely disproportionate number. You have women's unemployment rate now at 12.8% versus men's at 9.9%. The toll this is placing on women is phenomenal. Not just the actual job, but the reality is you're home you're used to doing double duty anyway, and now we're quadrupling that, and the pressure on us is significant. So the biggest thing we can do is be empathetic and truly understanding about the flexible nature of what we need to do. And if, I'm in a position where I am the boss, and that has to be the culture that I cultivate in the organization is complete flexibility. And fortunately, I no longer have kids in school, they're adults. And I've said to my husband more than once, I can't imagine what my staff is going through right now, who are literally beside them are, a 7-year-old crying because they can't figure out how to get the computer done. They're online learning. So it's that empathetic nature. So I look for people who are inquisitive and can connect dots. Right now, we're in the process of almost throwing out our org chart and completely looking at our workflow a completely different way. And I value people who are willing to do completely new things, come up with new ideas. And if you love that culture, then you're going to thrive there because you're going to step right in and do things that you've never done before. And now's our moment to shine. And we can talk about what was all we want, but let's talk about what we want to achieve next. And it's a very exciting time. There are people in my staff who have been used to doing the same thing, say, putting on a trade show for decades, right? And now they're throwing themselves into a complete new universe and thriving. And that's the type of individual that I want on the team and that most organizations want on their team.
If I may, and I just want to mention that I did provide some guidance of questions to the panelists, but I reserve the right to follow up with questions. So that nobody knows what I may or may not ask. So I'm prefacing that because I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but I'm going to ask you anyhow, Lori. I'm assuming that you are responsible to a board in some way. And I am interested in knowing how are they measuring your value at this time? I'll just leave it at that. How are they measuring?
Well, that's an excellent question. We create our goals. It's a board-driven organization, and we work in tandem. The senior staff and the board are we're very much a team. And there's goals for the organization that are driven by the organization's strategic plan, and those goals then become my goals to implement. And when your world turns upside down, so do those goals. And right now, the goals are to keep the organization on track. We talked about Drupa having 70 years. We're in our 76th year. And I want to make sure we go to the next 76 years. So the entire energy of the organization is being imaginative and innovative and not being afraid to take risks. But if you don't have that culture to begin with, fortunately, we had a culture like that to start, and that it took a while to get there. It wasn't like that when I first started 16 years ago, but now the board embraces innovation and risk-taking. And so now would not be the time for an organization to completely start that type of culture. But when you have that culture to begin with, I'm very blessed that the board is like, just go for it. We know there's going to be mistakes, and you're just going to give it your best shot. Because no one has a playbook for any of this.
So I'm going to interject there for one more second, and I'm going to give a shout out to Kelly Malazzi, because we get tweaked when we hear women say, I'm blessed, I'm lucky, instead of taking ownership that you were given that trust because you've earned it. You've earned that respect. It's not about being blessed. It's not about being lucky. It's about hard work. It's about being there and having a proven track record of delivering for your members and your exhibitors and your attendees. So I'm just going to say that to you. And
well, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so I may say the word blessed, but I work my ass off to get it there.
Okay. So let's, from now on, you say, I'm blessed, but I've worked my ass off to be blessed. As long as it comes with that framework, I won't get tweaked at these
deal
kind of ways that women in general describe themselves. Women also tend to say, I'm really sorry to bother you, but, why am I sorry to bother you? I need something from you, just keep it moving. Okay, let's move to Pat, who's in a little bit of a different situation, but go ahead. Oh, sorry, you muted.
Yeah, I am. So I have been up and down in this industry. I've had a male director look me in the eye and tell me that he was letting me go because the guy sitting next to me with less experience had a family he had to feed. And I have had, another manager tell me that I was exactly what he needed in the role that I had, but there was another guy who was being downsized out of another department who, he had a family. I've had the Canadian Customs people ask me what I did for a living as I was traveling into Canada to sell my software company. To a Canadian company, because the guy standing next to me, who was actually our chief R&D person, he was asked, he decided he was the president. And when he said, well, no, she's the president, Canadian Customs didn't believe me. So, I've had all that fun. But I've also managed 70 people in a software company, and we have 3 family restaurants. Deb knows the story. And I've had to lay off everybody, this year, been able to hire most of them back. Most of the people who work for us are women, and they're strong women. They're women who are doing what they love to do, and also raising their families, right? As for the most part, they're all really strong women. I've been really impressed with a lot of the women that I've worked with and around, and even the people who've laid me off or pushed me out a door because they decided some guy needed a job more, even though I've always been the primary breadwinner in my family. You have to, you just have to keep working harder. And that's what I've always done. So I form a weird role, right? I'm an infrastructure role. The way, if you look at what Lori and what Sabine do, they lift the industry because they're managing these massive associations and organizations that are designed for educational goals. And I'm jealous as all heck of what they get to do every day. And for V and for Dawn, they get to help people with these great brands that they represent. And it's twofold, right? They get to not only represent the brand and lift the brand up, but they also demonstrate that it's not a gender-based requirement to be really good at your job, right? It's all about how you approach the job and how you do it. So having been, on the vendor side, having been an analyst, having owned companies, software companies, I've kind of played all the roles, but where I've settled at the moment is that I'm working as sort of an infrastructure consultant to people who need help. And as a result, I find that I'm on the phone with a lot of young people in the industry right now. I've got 10 women actually who are all in their 30s who I'm talking to regularly, who are trying to navigate not getting downsized due to COVID, right? Trying to keep their image up, trying to also be empathetic, and trying to ensure that their management know that what they do is important to the company. None of these conversations are easy. The best advice I have for all of them is to just do, I think, Lori and V and have both said it really well, that You just continue to do your job, work as hard as you can, demonstrate your work ethic, but by God, have a work ethic. Don't just sit back and moan about the fact that maybe you are not being treated the same way because you're a woman in business. Be proactive. I'm sorry that the world is divided into two genders, and for historical reasons, men seem to get lifted up, but it's the way it is. The best thing I can do is be the best I can be. The best thing you can do is be the best you can be. And if somebody questions your work ethic, your intelligence, your education, you just step right back up, go toe to toe with them, and explain to them exactly who and what you are. And if that means they let you go, it's the risk you take in standing up for yourself.
So something, you talk to a lot of people, you see a lot of stuff going on, and you're dealing with the women who are fighting for themselves. And I've noticed a lot of really interesting psychological stuff going on just on social media about this, that now that we're not paying more attention. And what I've been noticing is that somebody will post something about a job being available or ask a question about, does anybody know this? And every guy will jump in and say, I can do it, whether or not they can or not. And the women do not, because, I don't really do that. I don't really have that experience. I don't really. In our last panel, somebody said that women are judged by what they have done and men are judged by their potential, which is really interesting now when we're talking about how do we keep these positions. So
I would change that a little bit. I think women are judged by their previous resume and men are judged by what they say they can do. I would actually make it even that it's fluffier than what you said.
Than potential.
It's not just what they can pitch. It's what they claim. It's what they.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly by the pitch, and we have to get really good at the pitch.
Well, that's what we're framing in the sense that job titles are changing right now. They're being very flexible. So just because you see a job title doesn't mean you can't do that job. You just have to look at it and look in what can you actually bring to that job. Which would be my advice. Not that I'm trying to interject myself here, but Pat, along those lines, what are some of the things that people should claim they do? Women should stand up and say, yes, I can do that.
So it's really hard to be specific because every situation is looking for some different answer. But remember that you're a sum total of everything that you've done and that you do and that you've read about and that you think about. And just because you haven't done some specific task before, you haven't mastered some specific piece of software before, you've done a lot of things. If you're in this industry, you are called on to do weird things all the time. There is no customer you serve that is identical to the customer you just served. There's, the next one's going to be different again. Everybody's got different needs. So when somebody says, I'm looking for somebody that does this, your first thought should be, what have I done that's like that? Not, oh, I've never done that. That's not for me. I had someone say to me the other day, one of these people I was talking to in a mentor role said to me, oh God, there's this job. I really want this job, but it says that you have to know this specific piece of software and you have to have an MBA and I'm thinking, no, you apply for this job, you frame your letter to them, your CV, whatever it is you're using to communicate that you want the job, to focus on your skill sets and how they apply. Remember, sadly, most of the resumes that you submit through LinkedIn or Indeed or any of these other services, they are being read by robots, right? They are not being read by people. You don't even get into the next mix unless you style your resume to meet what these bots want for that job. So think about that when you become aware of a job, and think about, how do you boil down your experience to be almost generic in terms of skill set? and move forward that way. Don't be afraid of anything. Just because somebody says that you have to have an MBA to get a job does not mean you need an MBA to get that job.
Speaking of not being afraid of anything, imagine being the first woman director of Drupa after 60 years and dealing with, let's call the traditional establishment of the printing industry, which is old and storied over in Europe. We're the new kids on the block here, you know, but in Europe, they go back to Gutenberg. Yeah. So that's many, many years. So Sabine, how did you navigate that when you first started and sell your professional value to the leaders and of corporations and governments? You deal with everybody.
First of all, good evening from Düsseldorf in Germany.
Yes, I'm sorry, and please tell everybody about the upcoming show. My apologies.
Yes, with pleasure. So, but probably starting earlier with your previous question. So indeed, when I started in 2013 at Messe Düsseldorf, I had a lot of respect, needless to mention that. A brand with that tradition, 70 years old, let's say the target and the goal to maintain that importance and even to further develop it from a strategical point of view, all the expectations that were more or less put on my person have been huge. And I would lie if I wouldn't say that I had sleepless nights when I started, because in that period, even in 2013, the impact of the previous recession on the industry already has been still very important. And so when I started, the overall target was as well to reposition Drupa, to think it differently, to enlarge, let's say, product groups, and really to position the traditional show from different perspectives and to enable to grow it as well. I mean, that's as well certainly the business model we are all working in. We are considering growth and we're considering, let's say, the appealing effect. So it's a mixture of having, let's say, the sales, having the marketing perspective, PR. So being in trade shows like, a lot of competences is here already on the table. You simply have to come with different approaches and with a set of skills and competences, that you all have to mix and balance. So when I started, probably just as everybody was telling, what about references and previous backgrounds? So one important background was that I worked nearly 15 years prior to starting for Drupa for international trade fair organizers in different industry segments. And then again, probably the ability to decline what you have learned in previous trade fairs and marketing and PR could be as well adapted to Drupa. And that was from a technical point of view, let's name it like this, a perfect start. However, just there's nothing more constant than change. You had to dive into the industry. You have to adapt with all the challenges in the industry. You had to build up the network. And that is one thing that I would like to point out, talking about the gender themes and differences. I think one challenge or one target for women in any industry should be as well to build much more intensively networking female networks, because looking at men, how they connect even during university or afterwards via, if it's Rotaries, if it's the Lions Club. I myself, I'm in a Lions Club that allow women. So since already 10 years. And it's very interesting to observe how contacts, how even jobs are just as well available next to official, let's say, LinkedIn portals or whatever. A lot of, at least spoken for Germany and I think Europe and probably as well in the US, is working via personal contacts. And women could improve much more intensively, let's say, talented networks and at least allow the direct contact, and by that as well, the support and help we can deliver in getting women in very interesting and challenging, let's say, job profiles. So I can only encourage to do that. And I joined as well a women network in Düsseldorf, which is called Twin, Top Women in the Industry. And you find simply, very interesting profiles. And unfortunately, time is not always allowing to interact that intensively, because they are just having very interesting programs And but you can easily feel the willingness to support and the help, and you can share and interact and learn from different, let's say, leading and positions and very inspiring profiles. So that's one thing I just wanted to underline, that I think there's still a potential to go for. However, now looking at the current status quo and the impact of the pandemic, which has been terrible on our business model and on the industry. So just consider that when the pandemic started, it was a Black Friday for Drupa when we had to postpone. It was the Friday, the 13th of March this year. And it wasn't only Drupa that we had to postpone, but another world-leading trade fair, which is Interpack. And at the end of the day, the year 2020 would have been a rally, or let's say a run-up with trade fairs that would have all taken place this year from January, more or less, till autumn. And in 1 second, no trade show, more or less, could have taken place so far. So the first show that this year restarted business was the Caravan Salon, and quite successfully, but in between, just talking about leadership, talking about encouragement of your team, of my team. So I think very important has been what already has been said by everybody, the empathy, but then the encouragement and the positive attitude that on a regular daily basis you have to be responsible, and you have to motivate people in a situation that is so difficult and that is just frustrating for everybody. Going through those times and difficult periods without having a clear milestone, which is today not even possible. Looking at the increasing infections now in Germany, Düsseldorf is now a red flag area. We, like nearly or let's say most parts of Germany. And so we were in a much better situation a few weeks and months ago, but it's just simply getting back into another uncontrollable situation. And it's as we are depending, like any other industry as well, so much from other external parameters. That's what is getting me to a certain, let's say, situation where I have to motivate myself again and be more self-assurance, and really to try at least to anticipate what is going to be possible within week by week, because a longer perspective is more than difficult to discuss. So I think the skill set is certainly being an encourager in these times, having a positive attitude, motivating people, and still providing trust that we will see post-COVID times and we will restart with our business. And the print industry is so creative, and it has been developed so intensively in the last years, at least when I'm looking back. And unfortunately, I only had the pleasure to saw and to be responsible for one edition of Drupa in my 8 years. And it hurts that there would have been a perfect, let's say, timing this year. We had an excellent position, record attendance again in terms of all key players from the world, pre-registered visitors from foreign countries you cannot imagine, and just going from 100% down to nearly zero in that kind of period was, that was really a situation, I think, that was shocking for everybody. And so we can now only, and this is what we did as Messe Düsseldorf, we worked on hygienic concepts. We're just enabling now that shows will take place, the sooner the better, at least spoken for the first quarter of 2021, hopefully. However, as I just said, we can only speak for today, and we don't know what is going to happen in the next few weeks and months. But still, you have a long, let's say, you never stop learning and adapting. So we all have to cope with that situation. And we have to build up, as you said, Deborah, in the beginning, on hybrid, virtual, digital channels, and to enrich the physical, let's say, happening if that is not possible. So really, work on new approaches, work on new channels to connect and to get a reach on a worldwide community level and to interact like we're doing now, because otherwise, we are going to lose touch points. And I think that's one of the most important things in those times, to connect on a regular basis.
I just want to add, add a couple of things and ask you a follow-up question. First, to your excellent point about networking, now when I see anybody posting a job, I don't care if they're a man or a woman, I contact them and say, hey, send a girl, a woman, I just said girl because I was going to Girls Who Print. Send a woman in your company to join my group and post your jobs in my women, my Girls Who Print group. I encourage all the women in the group, if they see a job out in the social sphere or whatever it is, to come back to the group and let everybody know, because to your most excellent point, we need to develop our own network of hiring people and hiring in a system where we can help bring each other to new places. Pat famously does that. We'll bring a gaggle of new people with her. The second point I wanted to make was that Messe Dusseldorf is responsible for thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, which I don't think everybody might understand. So I just want to point that out, from the electricians to the people who make sure that the systems are working. I mean, how many people actually work at Messe Dusseldorf, including in Dusseldorf, Sabine?
So in Düsseldorf, we're having approximately 600 people working. And as you just said, in all areas that you can imagine, from accounting to projects. And we have a portfolio of 50 trade fairs taking place right here in Düsseldorf. However, you're fully right. On top of that, we're having our office in the United States, Messe Düsseldorf North America, based in Chicago. We're having the office in Tokyo. We're having an office, Messe Düsseldorf Asia, in Singapore. We're having an office as well in Moscow, Messe Düsseldorf Russia. And so the overall group is quite impressive. And certainly, and not last but not least, I forgot to mention China. So Messe Düsseldorf China, based in Shanghai, as well as in a subsidiary in Hong Kong. Just to let you know, we just had, or I'm responsible as well as Director Print Technologies for a portfolio next to Drupa that is in the printing industry. And just last week, as we all know, the trade fair business restarted in China, where the pandemic started. So last week we had the All in Print in Shanghai, and interesting enough, it was very successful. The show lost a little bit in terms of space, however, not that importantly. And we had like 60,000 visitors, mainly from China, as there are travel restrictions and visa challenges. But I really felt so happy because my team and myself, we got a virtual guided tour from our colleagues in China, and we had a big Drupa booth. And at least with that video audio, capacity, we had the chance to walk around the show. And it felt to a certain extent wonderful. And on the other side, we were sad not to join and to be unable, to participate at the event. So, and then we have the show in Bangkok, which is taking place next year. So there's more or less every single year a show that is taking place within my portfolio show in the Philippines, and all are more or less, except China, attacked by the pandemic so far, and have been either postponed or will be organized, like the Printing United show and many others, as virtual hybrid events. And so we are, that's, I think, a very, very important tool as well. So on a regular basis, let's say every Friday, we're just organizing management conferences, and the CEOs, all men, more or less, from Singapore, from China, from Russia, very often just interact and just provide a current status quo about what is happening specifically in terms of trade fairs, because, sometimes you get a perspective from the government, but there are, let's say, situations where we simply don't get any information from when you can start on again and restart your business. So, as I said in my previous sentences, the fact that you're depending on so many external factors simply gets you, to limits.
Yeah,
and that's the challenge so far.
And Dusseldorf depends on you. I mean, the whole surrounding city turns into Drupa City when it comes in. So I just want to thank you for your leadership, and I just wanted to make it clear about how many people we're actually talking about here that you're managing. Dawn.
Yep.
Your best advice for selling your professional value, and as a boss or a manager, what makes somebody a keeper in your mind?
Well, I think performance. I mean, I've never been big on titles. I don't have a stake in them. I always pretty much rule my world by a couple of things. One, honesty. Okay. Two, hard work. All right. And perseverance. Okay. I don't take no real well. Okay. No means okay, the other door. Okay. And I think women are very good at that. We've adapted. I look in my team for creativity and problem solving. I mean, those are the two skills that you kind of have to grow and have confidence in yourself. I try to instill in my team, there's not a bad answer, and what the hell, let's give it a shot. And especially with COVID, the worst thing we can do is I told them fail fast. Okay. That way we'll figure out what works. And we did that virtually and experimented with different platforms and trying to reach customers and training and just trying to keep that human connection with everyone that's in the field and in the industry. I think we've done a pretty good job of that with the short team. I also have experienced I call it every time there's a recession, I lose a job. I've never been unemployed for very long. I'm convinced that with one door shut, another one will open, and that's an attitude. I tell my staff, when you're not busy, work on your skill. Your skill, and I've said this at every college, every time they allow me on the platform, okay, skill is what sells. Keep your skills up. You may be a manager now, but by the way, I can still edit an Illustrator file to be prepped on press. Okay, don't know when I may need that skill, but I keep it up. Okay, because that keeps you employable. You get you in the door. It also helps you teach the people that are with you if they don't know. So, craft is very important to me. So that's kind of my world at the moment. We've been fortunate. We've only had one workforce reduction. Okay. We have really tried to control expenses as much as possible and hang on to everybody. Again, having a young team as I do, they are not up the food chain as far as high salaries. So, and they shovel a lot. So they're looked at as a good resource. And I tell them all the time, that's exactly what we need them to show the organization, not yesterday, but today and tomorrow. It's not a one and done deal, as I tell people.
Right.
You got to keep plugging. You got to keep telling them that you're valuable, and you got to keep showing them. Say what you mean and do what you say.
Yeah, actually, in last year's panel, no, not last year, the year before, V actually made a comment that people still quote her on today, which is that sometimes a career ladder isn't a ladder, but it's a lattice. And sometimes you need to go, along the same parallel line before you can go up. And in that, getting skills for the next job you want to have, or for the job 3 from there that you want to have, is a really good way of spending this time if you happen to have it to spend. I want to move on to the next question now, which is sort of a question and sort of a more of a statement. And for everyone who's not in the United States, last couple of weeks ago, there was a vice presidential debate, and in the United States, the woman who's running for vice president, her name is Kamala Harris, and she is of Black and Indian descent. And the current vice president is man named Mike Pence, just happens to be a white guy. I'm just mentioning it because of all of the conversation and rhetoric and whatever, however you want to classify the conversation that was happening on our televisions, 3 words stood out and echoed across the social sphere, which were, I am speaking. I am speaking. The amounts of times that she was interrupted and the way that she was interrupted reminded me of an email that I received in regard to these community Zoom meetings, which actually have the same thing going on. And the email was literally thanking me. I'm just going to say it. I've been in too many meetings where men keep talking over women. It's making me tired. It was great to hear you claim your space and make your points. Now, I'm glad that she saw it that way, but a lot of the men saw it as I was being a loud, obnoxious bitch who was just, and honestly, that's what I said too. I was like, excuse me, you spoke. Now it's my turn to speak. That's how a conversation works. So leaders need to be followers, and a successful leader is respected in the space that they command by everybody. So what is your advice for establishing and maintaining your leadership space, and particularly when it's being challenged? And I originally framed the question as being challenged by men, but I can tell you that I've had women challenge me more. Sometimes they're not as friendly as you would hope. So how do you hold your space when it's being challenged in that way? V, I'm going to start with you because I know that you have experienced this.
Yes. So it's interesting because after that happened, I actually I have pretty strong political stance. However, I don't often talk about it on social media. I kind of reserve that for my personal conversations. But anyway, this particular one, regardless of your political stature and whether or not you like Kamala Harris or not, I saw the mind management that she had to exhibit to not appear to be bitchy or rude or disrespectful or passive aggressive or whatever else. And I actually said, I'm a pretty, I think you would say, if you've known me for more than 30 seconds, I'm a strong woman, tough woman. I'm fairly outspoken. I'm a D on the disc. I'm a red, all of that. Like, those are all things about me. They're all true. But I think that a lot of people, why don't you smile? You're too aggressive. You're too this or too that. And I think that from my perspective, it's super important to be mindful of the fact that you can be perceived that way, but don't let that own you. Because the reality is, I'm not going to minimize myself for the sake of any human. I'm just not going to do it. I don't do well with disrespect from anyone. And I think that it's really important to be able to stand your ground, but you have to stand your ground with a level of respect and confidence that doesn't ooze arrogance. And I think that's a very hard balance for a lot of people. It's having a level of humility without being subservient in the workplace, and being able to express your opinion without it becoming a fighting match or a cat fight or whatever it could turn into. But I'll tell you, I have seen men behave so poorly, yelling at each other, slamming their hands on the tables, doing all kinds of things that if I ever did those things, I believe I'd be walked out of wherever I was. But I think it's important to recognize that there is a double standard. And I think when you recognize the double standard, you can almost set up your defenses to be able to handle them. And so there are times when I want to say something so bad, and I just think to myself, you know what? Is that going to serve me in this situation? Is that going to be the right way for me to respond to that in this situation? And maybe it is, and I go there, and maybe it's not. And my team, they joke, and my boss jokes, and I've often gotten stuff. And my boss is a pretty fierce woman too. I think she's listening. But if my face doesn't say it, my mouth will. So you're going to know what I'm thinking. It's very difficult for me to kind of shrink. And I think don't shrink. Don't allow anyone to make you shrink, because the reality is we have a voice. We have a seat at the table. We can project and we can play a role. And then a lot of times somebody, I think her name's Sabrina, she commented earlier that men will apply for a job when they only have 40 to 50% of qualifications, and women won't apply until it's 80 to 90%. I have a coach. She's a tiny little girl. Her name's Carissa Kuchis, and she works for Tony Robbins. She applied for his national speaker role. In the very bottom, it says, if you believe you are in the top 1%, do not apply unless you believe you are in the top 1% of applicants. She was like, not only am I number one in the 1%, I'm number one and you're hiring me. Women don't always do that. It's like, know your worth, know your value, be willing to stand up for that. But then don't allow anyone to say, oh, you've got an attitude, or you're bitchy, or, whatever. What are your qualifications? Or you've got kids. Maybe you can't handle that job right now. No, you didn't ask that man. He's got kids. He's the same parent situation that a woman has. So it's just knowing who you are. You said it, Pat, knowing who you are and what you are, and then not allowing anyone to make you shrink from that.
Thank you. Lori, how do you keep your space?
We also have to support each other. And there's been many times when women hold each other down. And so we need to really build each other up. I volunteer with an organization that helps underprivileged young women get through college and find a job. I'm doing a career, how to do an interview training session for them Saturday. I will bend over backwards. Any young woman contacts me about life and work, I will do anything I can to lift them up. And it's just incredibly important. But once you're in the job, it even gets harder, because we have to support each other. And I think that Sabine talked about peer groups. I'm a big believer in peer groups. I'm in numerous peer groups. My women's CEO group, I'm here because of people like that supporting me. And it's just extraordinarily important. We started at ISA something called Women Leading the Industry, trying to build up networks of women just to support each other, because what you all are experiencing, we've all been there. We've all been there. And I have a little mantra that I do, and maybe you've heard about it. It's a mindful technique. And so it's the acronym is RAIN. You recognize how this is making you feel. You allow it. You investigate why you're feeling that way, and then you nurture yourself. And you say, you are enough. Damn it. You are enough. And yes, that person may have tried to make me feel like crap. Allow that to sit in there, and then get pissed as hell and keep moving.
I will go to Sabine Gelderman. I can't even imagine what you have been through trying to hold your ground. And I say that because of the really, it's been my experience that the men, especially in Europe, are very set in their ways about how things are.
Not just in Europe, Deb.
I know, but I'm telling you, it's even more so than anything you've ever experienced here. I've experienced it tenfold in Europe. Being me is not easy in Europe. I'll put it to you that way. That's why I have Karis Kopp, who helps me be me in Europe. Sabine.
Yeah, so very good note. So I would like to add to everything what already has been said, which is so true, that self-confidence certainly has a high priority. And other than that, what you just said, Deborah, intercultural experience, I think, is something that is very important as well, to control your emotion. And as you just said, Drupa combines and encourages and invites so many different cultures. We had 183 nations at last Drupa, and it's interesting to see how men specifically from all these different countries react as well when they understand that you have a so-called decision management and that you are the one that is probably deciding on many topics they are interested in. So one side of the story is again to justify what you're doing, to be very self-confident and to control once in a while your emotion to that point where diplomacy is then probably the key to handle conflict conversation you might have with at that stage. So it's I think the intercultural aspect in Europe or being in charge for a world leading trade fair is as well a very important attitude that we and my team and I are focusing on, and including all the valuable support we're getting from our worldwide reps that act in their local markets, but still I think that's a quality that I should have or that we all should have in us, and understand that probably reactions might be different from a national point of view than from an international one.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, just learning how many kisses each country gives when they greet really goes a long way in Europe. If you give a
post-COVID, though, that may all be going away.
I know, but after I just learned the formula. And actually, when I was at Drupa, I made the cultural error of trying to hand something to somebody from Saudi Arabia, and that's not their culture. And I had to understand that I was the one who did not do my research and did not understand. And I was the one who was, there was no scene or anything. It was perfectly, but I didn't understand what was going on. And I love the point that you just made, which I hone that in as always know your audience. So thank you for that. Pat, you're next. Go ahead.
So if for everyone listening, if you have never looked at a book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, this is a book I have routinely bought for people in my universe for the last 20 years. Because especially when I've worked with people who are new to working internationally. Deb, I did not buy it for you because I had you by the hand. So I thought we were pretty safe. But in the end, and we practiced in Ireland where it was pretty safe. But in general, there are cultural differences around the world. And I work a lot in Asia, and even, you think Asia is one big thing, and I promise you it is not. Thailand different from Singapore, different from Japan. Hong Kong is different from mainland China. So kiss, bow, or shake hands. If you work internationally today, or you want to grab this book, it comes in a lot of different editions now, and it has saved. I've gotten notes from people saying it has saved mistakes. Send in the wrong color flowers. It's all kind of stuff that can get you. So that's number one. Number two, resist the inclination to try and be one of the boys. We're not one of the boys. What we are makes us, I think, better, smarter, more empathetic, more global, more worldly. We're really smart people. We don't need to outdrink the guys. We don't need to beat them at pool. We don't need to, outbet them at the sports book. It's not really needed, and I've watched women that I've worked with go down that path. And for some, they're comfortable, they're happy with it. Great. But my advice is to resist it, because it's not just learning to develop the right tools to gain the respect of the people that you work with, regardless of their gender. Because sometimes, other women can be the harshest critics. But it's also being comfortable enough to know what you are and not trying to be somebody else in the mix. I know in some companies there's a real strong drinking culture. In some companies there's a real strong, go out to the bar and close it down culture. I've always resisted that. I have my glass of wine, call a night, drive through, please. And I'm happy to do that. But I don't feel a need, but I watch people struggle with when is it okay to leave, and when is it okay to say no, not tonight, and when is it okay to not have the drink or not to do whatever the frat boys are doing. And I'm using that term.
Yeah, but Pat, how do you not get left out of the deal? How do you not get left out of the conversation? How do you not get left out of that customer or that client saying, that's my guy? That's what you get left at, not going to that bar.
You can be left out. Maybe yes, maybe no. And again, I've been doing this for 40 years, and I haven't actually lost a deal because I didn't go out to a bar. I know everybody, listening probably has a story of where they feel that they were. But I have to believe that I'm going to outwork and outsmart everybody else around me. That's just how I'm going to win. And I'm not going to win by going and drinking. Now, that doesn't mean I don't go out, right? And it doesn't mean I'm not willing to go out and sit and, drink my club soda, which I've done on any number of occasions. But to be honest, I'm not really sure that that you lose a deal over it. Now, and remember that some of this is generational turnover.
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was a whole lot harder to say no. As new generations are coming along and new perceptions in society about what acceptable behavior is, and there really is a change in the last 10 years. I think that it's not a necessary thing to do.
Right. I want to give the 2020 Girlie Award winner the last word on this panel as far as establishing and maintaining your leadership space, especially when it's being challenged.
Again, I don't take no, and that's probably something that came along a long time ago, from getting shut down. You just keep knocking on the door, keep reiterating what you know. And I'd agree with the ladies that are on this panel. We are smarter than most of the men that are in the room. We've had to know more to get the door to open than probably most of the men in the room. They've had the door open for them, and we pretty much had to kick the door in. And again, that's my 20-cent tour of management. I try to instill that in the people that I work with and the college students that I work with. Be your own self. If you've got good knowledge, and the hardest thing for me, I think, in business to learn, Deb, is what you're doing, is actually the relationship, getting and maintaining a group of women that support each other. Okay, someone that you can call on the phone going, wow, that happened at work. That didn't happen how I thought it should. Give me some pointers on how to approach it next. Men do this all the time, and we don't do it. Probably because we're too busy, doing the laundry, doing the cooking, trying to manage, all the other aspects of our life. Plus
being
our
teachers
careers.
now, women.
Yeah, in the room, and I think men are getting a little taste of that, because a lot of them that I work with are being teachers at home for the first time, okay, and getting them off to a half day of school and managing how to pick them up on their break and all these things that we've been doing for a long, long time, which is why when I look for a challenging job or have an opening, I look for a woman. They're better multitaskers. They understand problem solving. They look at a problem not from one side. They look at the cube and top and going, okay, how can I parse it out? How can I figure out how to solve it? Okay, that is our strength.
Thank you all so much for your thought leadership, for your time, and for, I mean, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look in the chat, but people really appreciated everything that was shared, and there was some lovely comments in there. As I mentioned, I did post everybody's name and LinkedIn profile. I suggest you connect. Certainly follow, everybody on social media. Sign up for the information about Drupa. They have a digital version coming up, a preview. ISA is back next year, and you also have a virtual wrap thing coming up. I just got in my email box.
The wrap experience.
The wrap experience, which is really fun at the show if you ever have a chance to see that. I don't want anybody to do anything. I'm actually going to eject you because we had someone push a wrong button before, and then we're just going to let the next panel in. So Kelly Malazzi, if you're out there, you need to change links, and I'm going to eject everybody. Dawn Nye, congratulations on winning the award.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Sabine. I know it's late where you are.
Thank you.
Bye, V.